And we should be live now. Let me make sure I am muted because I know my voice is going to shock me as it inevitably does. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Now it's showing up on YouTube. Got a little nervous there. Okay. Hi guys, it's Taylor and welcome to my very first, episode of this sort of series that has been a long time in the making, Getting Hitched. Basically, I talk with some wonderful people about one of my favorite directors, Alfred Hitchcock. I'm here with Steve from the Lawn Gnome. Steve, can you please discuss your experience with Hitchcock?
Well, certainly, but before I begin, I just want to say, Taylor, thank you so much for letting me be having the ability to join you on this pilot episode of a show that I'm really hoping to see many more episodes of on your channel, because I'm so glad to see someone else that is trying to show their appreciation for classic film, which I think is sorely lacking in the community today.
Yes.
But so my experience with Hitchcock is more recent, to be honest with you, but ever since I was young, I was always a fan of movies, and Hitchcock was a name that I always knew. Always knew. I knew he was one of the greats. I mean, the master of suspense. And the only thing was, I was never really a horror movie fan. So even though I knew he was a legendary director, I never really got on board right away. But nowadays, especially thanks to YouTube doing my throwback days every single month, I've been really trying to watch all of his greats. And I have been definitely, I think the right word is surprised, because he has definitely thrown me for a loop when it came to my anticipations of the films of his that I have seen. And Vertigo is definitely a good example of one of those moments.
Yeah, Vertigo's an interesting film.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my experience with Hitchcock is also pretty recent. I didn't start watching him until I believe my maybe sophomore year of college, which is maybe, 4 years ago. Time is weird after you graduate. And I wasn't too impressed when I first saw Shadow of a Doubt. The first 45 minutes are not much to write home about. And then that last 30 minutes really just gets you. And after those last 30 minutes of Shadow of a Doubt, I was hooked and I became obsessed with Hitchcock. So that's why I'm so excited to be talking about maybe one of my more controversial opinions. So today we're going to be talking about his 1958 hit Vertigo, starring Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. This film has been considered to be one of his best works, and it's also considered by many to be one of his best films ever made, or the best films ever made. Without going too deep into spoilers, I'm curious. Steve, what did you think about this film?
Honestly, I fell somewhere in the middle based on my experience. I was surprised by the entirety of the film because I was going in thinking that it was going to be a specific story, and then I got something completely different.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main reasons why it stuck with me. I had to really give it a little bit of time to stew, like most of his movies, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that we didn't discuss this right away, because I really wanted to make sure that I got my thoughts clear and I was absolutely certain. But yeah, I really fell somewhere in the middle. I didn't think that it was phenomenal, but I didn't think it was bad either.
Yeah, it's not even close to being a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also fall in the middle. I wish I loved this movie as much as a lot of people do, and I think it's his most, what one consider to be traditionally good film, if that makes sense. It's very artsy and it has a lot of weird breaks in the narrative flow. The nightmare sequence is one sequence that just sticks with me and I absolutely love. But it's not the story I wanted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily the story that I didn't want, but it was definitely the story that I didn't know I was going to receive. That's one of the few things that I could say about it. But one of the few things that I have to give him props for, which I think is probably the most positive thing about this film, along with a lot of his others, because my personal favorite Hitchcock film is Psycho. That is my all-time favorite. And one of the few things that I appreciate about him, even with the fact that this one came out earlier than Psycho, is that he pushed so many barriers. A lot of the topics and the themes that we saw in this movie were things that you never necessarily saw in film, especially in the 1950s. He really thought outside of the box. And it's also very interesting when you take a look at the horror / thriller genre over time. To a certain degree, it's kind of strange how we started in such a art form, and for a while it just sort of like felt like a very degraded jump scare in your face kind of thing. But now I think that there are directors that are really reaching into the past to those truly great horror themes and bringing them to the horror themes in films that we're seeing, especially in this past decade, and even getting something new.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like one director that stands out is Jordan Peele, who clearly takes a lot from Hitchcock, and especially Get Out, which doesn't really rely, I mean, it relies on one jump scare, but other than that, there aren't a lot of jump scares, and it's more built off of creating tension over what is a very, like, Vertigo is very slow paced, and so I think Get Out is as well. It's very slow, and then once it picks up, it picks up.
Yeah, and sometimes a slow burn is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, when you take a look at the recent movie that came out in September, which is the follow-up to It, which was It Chapter 2,
right?
One of the few things that I really love, I just want to have this conversation with people because I laugh when people say it's not scary, it's not what it's supposed to be, but I'm like, did you ever read the book? It's a very atmospheric, character-based story, and that's pretty much what it was. And like you said, Jordan Peele, I think that John Krasinski has really shown us some interesting things with A Quiet Place.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, and I really want to.
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about Hitchcock, too, is that his horror films are more digestible for me. You know, if you're more of a scaredy cat like I am, you know, you can watch one of his films and still get the sort of horror feel without sort of committing to being just terrified the entire time.
Yeah, I really like how he taps into the psychological aspect of the human psyche and mind. That's really what drives it, because I always really love the fact that he takes a look at the themes of neuroticism and paranoia, and the main character almost always in his films, especially in the couple of Hitchcock films that I've seen, the protagonist is his own or her own worst enemy, and I really like that.
Exactly. Although, and I will say, Vertigo is probably one of his more psychological films.
Absolutely,
it relies a lot on the main character just losing his mind. And actually, speaking of the more psychological aspects, I think we can go into spoilers. And this isn't as much psychological as it is, what did you think of the murder plot in this? The scheme, because I thought it was really stupid.
Well, here was where, ironically, I'm going to disagree with you, because that's basically what prevented me from like falling more towards the negative end of the film.
Really?
Because my attitude when I went into this movie, I thought it was going to be about a man who was prevented from moving forward in his life because of his acrophobia. But the thing that surprised me was the whole thing with the murder plot. The fact that this person who was supposed to be John's friend basically used his fear of heights to manipulate him and carry out the murder plot. That was what I thought was the most ingenious part of the film. It was also, that was my WTF moment when I was watching the movie. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Really? Okay, so that was my WTF moment, but in the negative. You gotta be kidding me? Because I think personally the plot relies on so many people being stupid that, you know, I couldn't buy it. Like, first of all, he has a wife that lives out in the country. Okay. And so he brings in a fake wife into the city. Do they not have friends in the city who will notice that he's with another woman? Do they not have friends in the country who will say, oh no, but I saw her in the country the other day. Why is she back in the city? You know, stuff like that. It relies on Jimmy Stewart's character, whose name I told, Scotty, is on Scotty not being able to conquer his what's it called? Agoraphobia?
Agoraphobia, that's what it is.
Acrophobia, not agoraphobia. Acrophobia.
Oh yeah, whoops, wrong phobia. Thank goodness I didn't say, at least I didn't say triskaidekaphobia.
His why did I forget it now?
The fear of heights.
Yes, his fear of heights. What if he happened to conquer it then, like he did at the end of the movie? What if someone else caught them? What if he was able to grab her beforehand? Now he's got a dead body, like up at the top of the tower. You know, there are so many ways this could have gone wrong, and it's just by sheer luck that he was able to pull this off. So I was thinking, well, every single time I've watched it, like, why not just push her down a flight of stairs? Why not just shoot her?
But you know, that's the best part about us being the fans of film that we are. We love to rip these movies apart, and we love to say, well, this is so obvious. It could have gone this way. It could have gone this way. This person should have done this, but then we wouldn't have had a movie.
Exactly. So I'm
That's
not
the way it always
angry with it, but I'm also like, this man is so stupid. Like, just push her down some stairs, make it look like an accident, poison her. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, but that's, you know, something, it is what it is. And at the same time, you know, for 1958 to see something like that actually happen, you know, you didn't get those kinds of things in films before. So the fact that you actually saw a murder plot like that unfold, it was definitely something that was ahead of its time. I mean, the fact that well, I called him John and you call him Scotty because it's actually John Scotty Ferguson.
Yeah.
So it's basically the same guy, Jimmy Stewart. And it was so interesting to see the fact that he just couldn't get past his fear of heights and how this woman just enveloped him, and yet I think it was also one of the other main reasons why it held him back from actually conquering his fear. It was sort of a distraction, if you will, which was also part of the murder plot. So by the time that he finally gets into that moment where he has to really go past his fear, he can't do it because he's never had the time to conquer it. I mean, when we watch the movie, we have that scene in the beginning of the movie with him and Midge, who I think is one of the best parts of the whole movie. I love that character. She is wonderful. The whole part with him on the chair, he goes, I look up, I look down, and then that's it. You never really see him trying to conquer his fear after that because he knows that he has to. But this woman is just driving him in a completely different direction. He cannot do it, and that's why the plot that is behind the scenes does in fact end up being successful, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I will say the plot is ingenious in how ridiculous it is. And it's something that I am willing to excuse in the grand scheme of things so we can have a movie. I think the reason I'm so hesitant to really love this film as well is that it really, I don't know, it doesn't have that Hitchcock flair or vibe that I really like. Like, have you seen Rear Window?
No, Rear Window is one of the few of his movies that I have not seen yet. I have seen, I believe, a total of 4 of his films. Okay. And they're all like his most popular. I mean, it's this one, it's The Birds, it's North by Northwest, and it's Psycho. I mean, those are when you mention Alfred Hitchcock, those are usually one of the first 4 movies that comes to somebody's mind when it comes to his work.
Well, let's add Rear Window to your list because, in my opinion, it's the best Hitchcock. It's the Hitchcock I watched when I fell in love with Hitchcock.
Yes, that's definitely
great,
yeah, Rear Window, and I believe we discussed this a long time ago. I believe another one of his is Dial M for Murder. So I need to see that. I've never seen Dial M. Yeah, I need to see that one too. So yeah,
that's a good. I mean, not that one. I hear that's a good one. I really like The Lady Vanishes. That one was a good one too, but it's one of his older ones. But Hitchcock has, I don't want to say he's not artistic, but there is a sort of simplicity to his works. And Vertigo is very, I'm trying to find the right word, and I don't want to say bougie or opulent, but there is a bit of artistic snobbery in it that you don't see in any of his other films. And that's not me saying artistic snobbery in a bad way, just in a way that I don't particularly look for in his films, if that makes sense.
That does, but at the same time, the fact that he makes those kinds of things in his films is what really makes them stand out. I mean, the whole effect that he uses to show the acrophobia of
Dolly zoom.
John, that's just that's also something that you didn't see often in movies before. So the
I'm pretty
fact
sure
that
he
you actually
invented it.
yeah, he's done so many interesting things, and he always does great work with wide angle shots. I mean, North by Northwest is his perfect example,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just such an interesting thing. And again, I just appreciate the fact that he pushes those barriers. I mean, another thing that I'm quite certain that was different about his films was I don't think we had ever actually seen someone on screen ever get checked into a mental hospital before that.
Yeah. But maybe not in a way where it was framed as this is going to help you or you're doing
Yeah.
this because you need help. It wasn't like a negative depiction. It wasn't a positive thing. It was a neutral thing that happened to him and was for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually want to circle back around to Midge because I do really like her a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I saw this, you kind of fall into the film conventions, which I think Hitchcock tries to subvert a lot. So when I first saw Midge, I was like, okay, well, he's going to give up on Madeline and end up with Midge as he should. And then she just disappears. Like, you don't see Midge after the mental institution scene.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at Midge, and maybe it's just because of the fact that I've been watching a lot of James Bond, but she was like Jimmy Stewart's Miss Moneypenny. Like there was chemistry there, but at the same time they kept it platonic. But I really was upset about the fact that Midge, even after she knew that one scene where she really blew her chance, I was very upset that she still didn't try to pursue, because if she really was someone that cared about this character, she would have been there for him a lot more than she was in this story. And I was quite surprised that Hitchcock pretty much just wrote her off. I really felt that she was going to be this character's saving grace, and maybe that's just what makes Hitchcock as good as he is. Like, he surprises you again. He doesn't give you what you want all the time.
Yeah, and especially because we know film conventions, like, we're like, okay, well, obviously this is going to be some sort of seductress character that's going to lead him astray, and Midge is going to welcome him back into her loving arms, or she's going to help him defeat this evil woman or whatever. And when she disappears, the entire time you're like, okay, so when's Midge going to come back? And
Yeah, exactly.
She doesn't. I really liked her character, though, and I really do wish she had been in the film more. And the actress who plays her, and I don't have her name up, but fantastic.
Oh yeah, hold on. I'll give you the name. I have her right here. Yes. It's I don't even know if I can pronounce this. It's Barbara Bel Geddes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
She's really good.
Yeah. I also think and also based on what you have said in regards to your attitude towards the murder plot, I think another one of the main reasons why people could have those kinds of feelings is also because of the fact that the person who carries out the plot is also very much a non-existing character. You don't see him behind the scenes either. You don't see him doing the whole conniving and the scheming and stuff like that. And I feel that because of the fact that he is probably the weakest character in the entire film, I guess that when you finally see this big twist unfold, it's basically you'll either go in my direction or it would go in your direction. I think that's one of the main issues there.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. You can't think about it too much. And I also like that he doesn't come back at all. Kind of like Midge, he's written out as soon as the real Miss Elster.
Yeah.
I always want to say McAllister. Mrs. Elster dies. He just skips the country and goes, and he's never brought to justice.
Yeah, exactly.
So interesting. And he basically got away with it because the one other person who could really prove that he had killed his wife, she's dead. So.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely was something that probably would have worked a little bit better for the general consensus of the film if that specific character was also developed a little bit more. But then again, it really is about John slash Scotty in this film. It's really about the development of his character and what goes on in his mind as these events truly unfold. So I do get that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And actually, I want to know what you think about Scotty. Like, what are your opinions towards him as a character, his sort of mental growth or lack thereof, or the changes he experiences mentally throughout this film?
Well, I guess the best place to start is my attitude about Jimmy Stewart as an actor. And honestly, this to me was my favorite role that he's played in the movies that I've seen. Because the only movies that I had seen him in before, I mean, look, I know who Jimmy Stewart is, okay? Ever since I was a little kid, I knew the name Jimmy Stewart. I saw American Tail 5 Goes West because he was the voice of Wiley Burp. I do remember him being the voice. It was one of his last roles that he ever played. So Jimmy Stewart, big name, always knew it. But the only movies that I ever saw him in were Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm not the biggest fan of those two movies, and maybe that's just because that it's not necessarily his fault. It might be Frank Capra's fault because he did direct both of those movies. And I always say that give the actor the right director and magic will happen. It's the reason why I am a big fan of Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio because of Quentin Tarantino. And Martin Scorsese. Those two directors took those two actors in various roles and gave me what I should have seen in these two a long time ago. So seeing Alfred Hitchcock work with Jimmy Stewart, beautiful. I think that Jimmy Stewart gives an amazing performance. I really appreciate how John slash Scotty is dynamic. I see that he is very caring, but at the same time, he is very selfish. And the funny part is, he starts off as a police officer. And when you think police officer, you think selfless. Someone who is going to be willing to take a bullet for you if you are in danger. But because of the fact that he is manipulated by this woman, as well as his supposed friend, who pretty much was the puppet master, it was amazing to see how his fear of heights and this manipulation and obsession over this woman, Madeline, basically turned him into a selfish monster, to the point where he actually uncovers the plot. And the only way that he believes that he can rid himself of these demons is to kill the other woman.
Yeah, no, I love seeing him sort of become slowly unhinged. I think for me, the most terrifying part of the film is when he's trying to make Judy over into Madeline again.
Yes.
You know, he keeps like, it starts off small little things like buying the suit, making sure she has the right shoes, then dyeing her hair, fixing her makeup. And it's really creepy, really eerie. And I mean, to me personally, it reads like a whole Reddit relationships post, which I don't know if you've ever visited that forum, but it is wild.
Well, again, also, this was also a barrier-breaking thing in film. You never saw stuff like this before.
Yeah. And the fact that because I mean, they obviously can't say like, oh, and then they had sex, but he clearly had sex with her after she became Madeline. And that was just so freaky and gross. And just his obsession with her is just, it's weird. And I find it so fascinating how he can just never get over this sort of weakness he had, the moment he couldn't act.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's amazing because of the fact that there weren't that many heroes in movies that actually, I mean, like, you go back to Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face in The Dark Knight, where he says you will live long enough to see yourself become the villain or die the hero.
Yeah.
And obviously, we saw that hero descend into madness and become the villain. And the fact that he literally is conquering, he actually does conquer his fear at the end. So you sort of, even though you're very reluctant, you still feel somewhat happy that he overcame his fears.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also just because of the fact that there were all of these inner demons that were brought upon him through all of those events, that just to see him shed them in the worst way possible, there is such a dislike toward him, but at the same time, there is also pity.
Yeah, because like at one point you're like, maybe he shouldn't kill her, or he's being like really rough with her when he's dragging her up. Like that scene where he like picks her up and you see her legs like move up. It's very weird, but at the same time you're like, I understand where he's coming from. This is soul shattering.
Yeah, and also it's amazing to actually see him conquer his fears in a murderous rage. He literally is like, he really is as if he were in a hypnotic trance while he's doing that. And it's very moving from an acting perspective. It really is powerful.
Yeah. Actually, I also want to move on to Kim Novak as Judy, who I think is also really interesting. And you don't really pick it up the first time, but I highly recommend watching the film more than once, because when you go back and watch it, you see all of these little moments where Kim Novak stops being Madeline and starts being Judy, like just small moments. And like once you know the twist, it's a lot easier to pick up. Like when they're first kissing and she's looking towards the bell tower saying like something like it's too late for us or something. There's so many moments where she breaks character, and that is such stellar acting on Kim Novak's part.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right. I actually do have my own review showing up on my channel right before Halloween, and I did specifically say, if I'm not mistaken, that I do feel that this movie does need to be watched again. Yeah. But then again, all of Hitchcock movies need to be seen at least more than once, because for a solid fact that you missed something while you were watching it the first time. And that's what makes a great horror / thriller film. The fact that you have to keep watching, even though you may be scared to death. You have to keep watching, or you're going to miss a crucial part that really was a major plot point. I think that that's why I love the movies of the Saw saga so much, because you have to watch what's happening or you're going to miss something very, very important. I still remember seeing the first movie and watching the end unfold and see everything come together. The whole plot twist took place in the first 3 seconds of the movie, and they show you that moment and you were like, oh my God.
Like, how did I not pick up on this before?
Well, it was like, that's why ever since I saw the first one and I started to watch all the other ones after that, I literally said, like, in the first part of the movie, like, this means something. This is important,
I've only ever seen the second Saw movie, and I checked out when someone had to, like, dive into a pool of needles. I was like, you know what? Can't do it.
Yeah, I actually have the first 7 films. I own them all, and I definitely am planning to watch them all for the sake of reviewing them, but also I want to rewatch them anyway, because I seriously believe that the first Saw film is one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, it was a beautiful script. It was great acting. The fact that it took them 18 days to film it was brilliant.
Wait, really?
And yeah, and I think that it is the best movie that came out of 2004.
And which Saw movie is this?
The first one.
The first one came out in 2004?
Yeah.
I did not know it was that. I thought it was older for some reason.
No, 2004.
That's surprising. I feel like they've been around as long as I've been alive.
No, they're more recent than you think.
But in terms of Judy, what I find really interesting is that, I love how she dies, if that makes sense. The nun coming up, like this physical manifestation of her guilt, just is so eerie. And the fact that she dies the same way she and Gavin essentially killed her double is so fascinating.
Yeah, that honestly is the one part of the movie that sort of upset me a little bit.
Really?
Only because of the fact that, you know, the whole thing with the nun and the ringing of the bell and then the fade to black, I'm like, okay, why did it end there? Like, there had to, I felt like I didn't get closure.
See, I like the lack of closure. I loved the fact that you ended right there. I think the one thing I didn't like was the nun just not even going to check and maybe she's alive. She just immediately starts ringing the bell and the whole God rest her soul thing.
Or could it possibly be that she knew everything?
Ooh, that's interesting. Like she was
That's
listening to the whole thing.
Yeah, and it was like she knew everything from the very beginning, and then she was like, well, F this, I'm done. I'm going to go ring a church bell now and finish this.
A nun after my own heart. I've done the same thing when I hear couples arguing. My friend and I will walk slower by the building to try and hear what they're arguing about. So you know what? I get it.
Yeah.
Nun is trying to get the tea.
Yeah, but then again, what I just said, is that not Hitchcock in a bottle for you?
Yeah, just the very nosy nun who knows everything.
Yeah, she knows something. For all I know, I got to rewatch the movie because as far as I'm concerned, she is in every single scene, just watching everything, and I didn't even realize it.
Just obviously there.
Yeah, she was basically Waldo. You just got to find her.
The nun is Elster.
There you go. There you go.
But I really do like Kim Novik in this film. I had never seen her in anything else, and I think she's a stellar actress.
Yeah, I really think that it is very hard, especially to play two roles in one movie.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically, I just watched a movie where two actors played two different characters, and that was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Ben Affleck. Yeah, well, it's like, you know, Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, the Kevin Smith movies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so Jason Lee plays the character that he played in the movie Mallrats and the character that he played in Chasing Amy in the same movie. Ben Affleck plays the character that he played in Chasing Amy, and he plays himself. So yeah, and he also, and those moments, and with Ben Affleck, his whole scenes are filled with meta moments, which is hilarious. But it's very difficult to play two roles in one movie because it takes a lot of acting chops to really make sure that you know which character you're playing. Like, you don't want to accent, because you're learning two different scripts, two sets of lines, and you got to make sure that you stay in the right character while you're filming that movie. So, yeah, absolutely. You got to give Kim Novak all the props in the world for doing that.
Yeah, and especially when she's playing Judy, that's like a role, or Madeline, it's a role within a role. So not only does she have to focus on being Madeline, she has to be Judy being Madeline, which is even harder. It's like a Matryoshka doll.
But you know something, at the same time, if Lindsay Lohan can play a set of twins in The Parent Trap, anything is possible.
Honestly, that's the first thing I thought of when you were like, oh, two people in the same playing, or one person playing two people in the same film. I was like, have you not heard of the classic The Parent Trap? Clearly a great film. Steve? Oh, we lost you for a second.
That was strange. Yeah, I lost you too.
I was like, wow, I guess that statement made you really happy because you were just smiling at me. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it was like George Costanza. That's it. I'm done for the day. So, scene over.
One other thing that I really did want to bring up is the role of color in this film, which I absolutely love. I know I complained a lot about Hitchcock being like really artsy and pretentious in this film, but I do love color. Now, I can't figure out, I know what the gray sort of symbolizes. Kim Novik's character wearing gray, putting on this uniform that's not her, that's, you know, just Madeline isn't a real person, you know, so to speak. She's just a role, a blank slate for Scotty to fall in love with. I still can't figure out what the reds and greens mean. I have talked about this in my film class, and I still don't know what they symbolize, but I know they're associated with Judy. So.
Well, I didn't really think so much about the colors, but one of the few things that, now that you've mentioned it, reminds me of something interesting, and that's the fact that Alfred Hitchcock really screws with the mind. The fact that the colors are so bright and vibrant
Yeah.
throughout the entire film, and the fact that it's sort of like the whole beauty is only skin deep kind of metaphor. Like everything looks beautiful on the surface. This guy looks happy and healthy, but unless you actually tap him on the shoulder and ask him what's going on, you have no idea how dark his world or her world truly is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Color is such a big part in this film, though, and I find it so fascinating that almost everything associated with Judy and Madeline, you've got all these vibrant reds, greens. Madeline slash Judy drives a green car. So this is something that I've tried to read essays on, and I still haven't figured out for myself. And I think Vertigo is a particularly difficult film for me to talk about because I think it's something that I've seen 5 times, and I feel like I have to watch it 5 more times to truly grasp what Hitchcock was talking about or thinking about or trying to discuss and get, push forth. Every time I watch it, I figure out a bit more, but I'm still not, like with Rear Window, where I know what he's going for, or Psycho, where I understand what he's going for.
Right. I mean, that's another thing about Psycho. I love the fact that they're a lot, not just him. I love it when people decide that even though we were living, even though we were still in the golden age of Hollywood, and there was still so much that Hollywood was going to advance in regards to filmmaking, when a director decides, even in these times, when I can make my movies the brightest and beautiful colors that I could possibly do, I want my movie to be in black and white. When he decided that Psycho was going to be in black and white, it was a stroke of genius because there's something about black and white that also brings up a little bit of mystery, and it's sort of haunting all at the same time. And there are even directors now that decide, I want my movie to be in black and white because there's something about the black and white palette that just entrances the movie-going public. Yeah. I mean, when a movie like The Artist, which is made in 2012, is not just a black and white movie, but it's a silent movie, that just says something. And look, it won Best Picture for the year. So there's something about those old feels that are so incredible, and I think that it reels you in. But also a color palette that is bright and beautiful, especially for such a dark movie, is just as entrancing.
Yeah, and I feel like you can get across a lot, like very different emotions.
Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of the artistry with Psycho was in the shadows, the way he played shadows to make Norman Bates look a lot like a bird. Like, that one scene where he leans over to look at the registry and he looks so bird-like. It's unsettling. I don't know if you've seen the 90s remake of Psycho.
Honestly, I was never really interested in seeing it. I always said to myself, if I'm going to see Psycho, I'm going to see the original. And quite frankly, I'm glad that I did because it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen all of it. I saw a couple clips and I got angry because it's all about, the director was really condescending. He felt like kids, nowadays being the 90s, wouldn't watch a black and white film. So he wanted to remake Psycho shot by shot for people who didn't want to watch a black and white film, which is so condescending.
I don't know. And meanwhile, Clerks is one of the most amazing cult classic films of the 1990s, and that was shot in black and white. People love the fact that it's in black and white.
Which one?
And Clerks. And I also just watched and I've just been watching some Tim Burton movies lately, and I just watched one of my all-time favorites, and that's Ed Wood. I love the fact that he shoots it in black and white. Same thing with Frankenweenie, a kid's stop-motion family movie in black and white. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think if you make an interesting film, people are going to watch it. And
absolutely, regardless of what as long as the subject of the story is good and the characters are relatable and great to watch, nobody's going to care.
Exactly, and honestly, when you make a shot-for-shot remake without taking into account that Hitchcock did a lot of his directing based off of playing with shadows, like I mentioned the Norman Bates scene where he's looking at the registry and he looks like a bird almost. When Vince Vaughn does it, it looks really awkward because you don't have the shadow play. He's just a man leaning over a registry very oddly. So I think it really does Hitchcock favors in that you see how brilliant he was to make a film in black and white and really play with the shadows and use it to his advantage. And
Right.
I feel the same with Vertigo. He didn't just make a film in color. He made a film in color that used color to sort of convey his message and to convey symbolism and to bring, I don't know, bring Scotty's sort of mental state to the forefront of the film.
Right. I actually wanted to ask you a question about a piece of the film that we haven't discussed yet.
Absolutely not. How dare you?
What are your thoughts on the score?
Okay, yes, Bernard Herrmann slaps. I love his music. I love his score. It's beautiful.
I personally think that it's the best score that I've heard in a Hitchcock film to date.
I 100% agree with that.
It's so, that opening credits song is so spine tingling. Like,
Yes.
you know that you're going into something that is going to be out of the ordinary when you hear that opening song. And it's amazing how throughout the movie, there are not necessarily score pieces that are quote unquote scary, if you will. They're very melancholy.
Yes. I especially the nightmare sequence, which to date, like I mentioned this before, it's one of my favorite sequences in all of film. I love it. It's weird and wonderful, and the music just really conveys this sort of nightmarish quality. I actually use it as inspiration for this Monster of the Week game I'm running. I don't know if you've heard of Monster of the Week. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Basically. So I've used that as inspiration for writing and so on because it's so haunting and it stays with me. And like you said, the beginning, which I also love the opening title sequence because I don't know if you know, but the woman they use isn't in the film at all. It's not Kim Novak. It's not Midge. It's just this random woman.
Right.
Which my theory is that random woman is the original Mrs. Elster or Elster.
No, it's the nun. It's totally the nun.
Everything comes back to the nun.
It's totally the nun. We just didn't realize it.
I'm just going to write nun Vertigo fan fiction now.
Well, I think what's so interesting about the whole concept of the movie, and the score definitely helps, especially even the movie poster, the figure, the black figure in the spiral, because that's sort of what it is. It's like Vertigo is sort of a double meaning in this film, if you will. It's not necessarily just about someone's fear of heights, but in Scotty/John's case, it's his fear of falling into madness.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I just looked closely at the poster and I didn't realize that it wasn't just a man falling into this sort of spiral. There's a woman there in the white. Yeah. I never realized that. So now I have to look at the poster 4 more times to understand it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Bernard Herrmann score is beautiful. It's such a interesting and haunting score. It sticks with you. Like I still think of that, like, you know, like you still that just sticks with you, like the Twilight Zone.
What I find interesting, the scene where Jimmy Stewart's character finally remakes Judy into this image of Madeline, and he kisses her, and it's sort of spinning around, and then he's transported back to the mission right before she died. But the music that's playing is a sort of carnival-esque sound, and it's haunting, like a haunted circus. And that's what it kind of put me, like, what it reminded me of. Like, this whole thing is just a circus. It's a facade.
It was sort of, to me, it sort of felt like, even though I know it wasn't, it sort of felt like the opening score going backwards.
Oh, that's a good idea. I wonder if it is.
Because it's like, basically, he's like, I've fallen this far. Let's rewind. Let's see how we got to this point. And now let's go do it all again.
Exactly. And the nun is right there in the back.
And the nun is there. And the nun is there.
I love this movie. I kind of wish we had gotten the ghost story with Carlotta Valdez, though, because I was really invested. The first time I saw it, I was so invested in that storyline.
That was the one part of the movie that kind of, for me at least, I was surprised that it was there. I mean, like, wow, really thinking about the paranormal and stuff like that. Another thing that you didn't really see much of unless you were watching those truly horrible B science fiction films that were being made at the time. Ironically, most of them being made by Ed Wood. But It was definitely something different, and for a while, I was trying to figure out, okay, where are we going with this? Why is this here? You know, it was definitely something that keeps the audience guessing. It's like, okay, where is this going to end? You know, it just keeps you guessing.
So this put me in mind a lot of Rebecca, which is another Hitchcock film that I don't believe you've seen, but you should definitely you should definitely add to your list because that's another one that's good. But I refer to both of those as ghost stories without the ghost. I'm not going to spoil Rebecca, but like with this one, you start thinking like, oh, it's a ghost story, and technically it swerves out of the ghost story lane, but it's still a ghost story. He is still haunted by Madeline, and you know he continues to be haunted by this sort of spirit of someone who was never really there in the first place.
Yeah, so I guess you could say that the whole thing with his mission to follow Madeline and observe Madeline is sort of a foreshadowing to what he was going to be like at the end of the film.
Yeah, exactly. You know, looking at or trying to recreate something or someone that isn't there anymore.
Exactly.
See, good film. I need to watch it 10 more times. I just wish I liked it more because I don't think it is deserving of Hitchcock, the title Hitchcock's best film, or even one of the greatest films ever made. I don't think it technically comes close to that, in my opinion. But
I guess the reason why some people would say that that's one of the greatest is probably, like I said in the beginning, it's just because of all the risks that were taken to make it. But I agree. It's like if I'm going to say I would say you will say the best Hitchcock movie of all time is the one that you think is the best one, and I would say the same. Like I will say Psycho is his best. But there's so many people that will say, no, you're wrong. You would say, respectively, Rear Window is his best because that's your favorite.
Yeah.
And here's the reason as to why. That's the beauty of having the concept of individuality within ourselves. The fact that we all have different opinions and different likes towards everything and anything. And the fact that we're able to come together and have these kinds of discussions is what makes us amazing as fans and as a society, especially in this community.
Exactly. And I think certain statements like the best movie ever made or the best X, Y, and Z ever made, it's such a subjective thing. Like people say Citizen Kane is the greatest film ever made. And I like Citizen Kane. Do I agree with that on a personal level? No. I agree with it in terms of did it change a lot for film when it came out? Yeah, sure. I'll say that. But
right. And when I think of Citizen Kane, I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I saw it in my film class and I was excited because I'm like, I'm going to see the best film ever made. And then the movie finally ends and I'm like, what the hell was that?
See, I was very opposite. When my professor told me this is the best film ever made, I was like, okay, sure, whatever. Like, I'm going to hate this. And then I really liked it. I get why people don't like it, but it follows the exact narrative structure that I like, which is the unreliable narrator.
Yeah, but you know what the other funny thing is? That's the way it almost always goes with everything. It's like when people are told this is the greatest blah, blah, blah. Like another perfect example, 2001, A Space Odyssey, known as the greatest science fiction movie of all time. To me, it is a 2.5 to 3 hour snooze fest, and it's boring as hell. But that's also because of the fact that I am not a fan of Stanley Kubrick. I am not ashamed to say that. I say that with pride, and I say it, and I have my reasons. There are 2 Stanley Kubrick films that I like. One that I can tolerate, and one that I absolutely love because it is nothing like any of the other movies in his library, and that is Dr. Strangelove. That movie is just funny as hell.
I've never seen the Kubrick film at all.
Yeah, I would say that if you want to, I say that Dr. Strangelove, if you love dry humor, you will love it. And that's why I think I connected with it so much. A Clockwork Orange is another one that I like. Just because I appreciate the pure, unadulterated zaniness and creativity of that movie. But 2001: A Space Odyssey, nope. Full Metal Jacket, nope. I am not a fan of. Oh, geez, I'm just trying to. I hate The Shining. I didn't like the book either.
I've never seen anything Kubrick related, and I am so nervous too because I feel like it is not my speed, but I also don't want to dislike him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but there's no reason why you have to like him either. You shouldn't be forced to. He may be classified as one of the greatest directors of all time, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to like him. I mean, I know so many people that don't like Quentin Tarantino films, and I love those movies.
Quentin Tarantino is a perfect example for me of how you can dislike someone but still enjoy the art they put out, because I don't particularly care for him. I have a lot of issues with some of his work, but my God, I love Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained.
They're great films.
Love those movies.
I personally feel that if you wanted to talk about Django Unchained on a live stream, I am right there with you. I think that that's his best film.
I agree. I mean, I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 of his films, but Django Unchained blew me away. And I like Inglourious Basterds too, but I thought it was a little overhyped. It wasn't what I wanted from a film, which is a terrible criticism that the director didn't make it the way I wanted it to be made. But
yeah. No, I mean, I just think that the thing about Django Unchained is that it's like a fine wine. It gets better with every single watch.
It's so good. And Christoph Waltz, fantastic. I love him in both Django Unchained and Inglourious Basterds.
Right.
But I also feel like Hitchcock is very much like Tarantino for me, in that I have a lot of issues with him as a person, but I love his movies so much.
Look, it's all about separating the art from the artist, and that's not difficult.
I personally disagree with that statement. As someone who's an aspiring artist herself in terms of a writer, I think you put a lot of yourself in your art. You put a lot of your views and yourself into a work. What I think is part of responsible media consumption is saying, yes, this artist did terrible things. Yes, Hitchcock did have some allegations about him, and you can't take that away. What you can do is say he did that and that was terrible, but I still like his work, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, look, I'm not going to deny the fact that, especially now with everything that happened, I think that a guy like Kevin Spacey is a dickhead. I don't respect him anymore. I don't like the guy as a person because of some of the things that he did. But I will not deny the fact that some of the movies that he has been in, his performances are absolutely stellar. The Usual Suspects, Pay It Forward, Baby Driver, American Beauty. These are fantastic. These are fantastic performances. You can't deny the fact that these characters that he portrays are just great characters. And I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to boycott movies all because of the fact that somebody is like this and did something that I don't like. I just don't think I just don't feel that encasing myself in bubble wrap is the right way to live life and enjoy entertainment.
I think it depends on the person, because for me, there are some artists that I enjoy, but as people, I think they're really terrible and I would never condone anything they do. But there are some artists, after the whole Kevin Spacey thing came out, I can't watch House of Cards anymore. And that used to be one of my favorite shows. I just don't get the same enjoyment out of it. Whereas I know about Hitchcock's former allegations. I've seen Marnie, and yikes. And I acknowledge that those are terrible things that happened, but I still watch his films and I enjoy it. It's just, I don't always feel like you can separate the art from the artist, because sometimes their views come through in their work. And
I won't disagree with you on that, but at the same time, once again, like I said, you have the right to feel however you want to feel about people in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
You don't want to watch their movies because of the types of the people they are. That's fine. I'm not gonna say that you're being a moron for doing it. You know, maybe if I was 15, I would have, because when you're 15, you really don't know what everything is and how to address everything in the right way. But as a mature adult, I wouldn't like to say that I'm a totally mature adult. I may be in my late 30s, but I look like I'm 20 and I act like I'm 10, and I'm proud of it. But I will respect people with their attitudes, but sometimes when someone says to me, I will not watch this movie for like the most asinine reason, and I'm not saying that somebody who doesn't feel that the person is a good person, I don't classify that as an asinine reason. But if someone just says, I won't watch this because I don't like this person, and you don't give me a why, then I'm probably going to say, well, then I don't understand why you feel that way. You have to give me a why.
Okay, I do agree with that. When it's just like, for example, I'm not a fan of Ben Affleck. I think something about him really annoys me. But if there's a good movie that he's in, for example, Gone Girl. I don't know if you've seen Gone Girl.
I love Gone Girl. I unfortunately did not read the book before I saw Gone Girl, and I will never read the book because I love that movie so much.
The book is good technically, but the film just so good. And, you know, I'll watch it because, yeah, I don't like Ben Affleck, but one, I think he's a good actor when paired with the right director. And two, Ben Affleck is miserable the entire film. So, yeah, we both win.
Hey, look, I personally think that he was the best version of Batman. I loved him in Batman v Superman. I really did.
Really? Controversial opinion.
Oh, believe me, there's a lot of people that agree with me. There's a lot of people that disagree, but that's another story for another time. I will talk about that movie up and down till the cows come home if I could.
I still haven't seen it. I've been burned by Suicide Squad, so now the only DC film I will watch is Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey. I have been burned by Suicide Squad so bad.
You didn't see Aquaman?
I really wanted to for Jason Momoa because he is my husband and I've got to support my man.
But yeah, you might have to fight him. You might have to fight my wife for him. I'm sorry.
Earrings off.
Yeah, she said, here's the main reason why I went to see this movie. 3 words, wet Jason Momoa. That's her exact quotes.
You know what? I agree with that. Your wife is speaking some sense.
Hey, look, it was if you enjoyed Wonder Woman, then you will enjoy Aquaman, and you would even enjoy Shazam.
Oh, Shazam is the other one I want to see. It's just that Suicide Squad got me so excited, and I paid to see it in theaters, and my God.
I want to have conversations with a lot of people about comic book films. We may have to at some point. Please,
because I have hate watched Suicide Squad 5 times because I keep thinking I'll like it and I don't.
Hey, honestly, I have fun with it. It's not a good. I actually have a good time with Suicide Squad, even though I know deep down in my heart it's a terribly executed film. But there are reasons. But there are reasons why it ended up being what it was.
Yeah. No, I think I read up on some of the issues, and a lot of the problems aren't with the acting itself or some of the ideas it has. It's the editing that really gets me.
It was unfortunately because of the overall reactions towards Batman v Superman that Suicide Squad had to go back to the drawing board and go through a re-editing. So basically, all because of what the critics said, the whole DCEU got effed up, and it's a problem. It was also a massive amount of studio interference.
Yeah. See, I can see how it would be a good movie. I know they recut it to make it funnier, but I only laughed at the Katana introduction because it was done so poorly. Katana and Slipknot, the worst part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
We totally got off track.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we don't really get a chance to talk about movies like this. So this is really healthy.
Exactly. And we got a little bit into the whole separating art from the artist debate, which I think is interesting. And that'll prepare whoever watches this for way in the future when I eventually get up the nerve and the stomach to talk about Marnie, because my God, if there was ever a Hitchcock film for you to skip, please skip that one. I hate that movie.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious. Did you ever actually see the Hitchcock biopic with Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren?
I have not.
Neither have I.
we might have to watch that and discuss it because
I really want to see it because I really liked Anthony Hopkins looks incredible in that movie.
hold on, I'm gonna Google what he looks like. Anthony Hopkins, Hitchcock. How did I totally misspell Hitchcock? Let's see.
A lot of prosthetics.
Yeah, he really got. Oh, and Helen Mirren plays Alma. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a very good movie. A lot of people said it was good.
And Scarlett Johansson is supposed to be Tippi Hedren or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where a lot of his allegations surround. Tippi Hedren is also an interesting woman, but yeah. If you ever watch Marnie, it's very 1960s approach to psychology and women.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's what I want to discuss one day, to talk about the more dark side of Hitchcock. But I can't do that now. For now, we're doing happy, fun, as happy as it can get Hitchcock.
There you go.
But do you have anything else to say about Vertigo?
To be honest with you, my friend, I think we covered all the bases in an hour, which is great.
Yeah, we covered so much. I was really nervous, but I think we got everything settled. So
yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing to do is, judge the movie for yourself. If the conversation that we had wasn't the best depiction, I mean, quite frankly, I know that we did pretty much talk a lot about what happened in the movie, but quite frankly, with a movie that is over 50 years old, I don't really think it's considered spoiling.
Just get on that and watch it.
Exactly. It's like I have no guilt giving a major spoiler about Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, next year you will have had 40 years to see that movie, my friend. I'm sorry. I can say whatever the hell I want about this now.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please watch Vertigo. Steve, thank you so much for joining me. And please follow Steve. I've linked his YouTube channel down in the description box below. So please follow him.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And have a good evening, guys.
Thank you, everybody. It was great.